welcome to my winter of 2026 reading wrap up. And this year I would like to do more of a talking content also about the books I read, and I think wrap up is a nice way to do that. So this winter I actually entered with a reading slump, which is not ideal, and I'm really sad, and I'm working on it. Like, I read today, which is a bit of a win, I would say, which I'm happy about. I started using Fable, and this is kind of how this reading month looked like. Not best, but I did read in total 5 books, which is, I still think, as a reasonable amount. I started the year off with The Only Sentence in a Building by Alexis Daria. This is the last novella in the collection Under the Mistletoe, and I think this one was nice and interesting. It wasn't the one I would hate necessarily, but it wasn't outstanding, so it was just a nice little read that I think is okay to read during Christmas time. And the second one I started was The Hair of a Black Dragon. I audiobooked this for a couple of nights, and I do think that the world building is immaculate. It's well written with so many little details, which I love. But unfortunately the plot is not really interesting, really predictable, and I would say quite boring. But I do like the world building, and I like the idea that in this world dragons have 3 forms, which is their human form, like it's a soul of a person, then their like second form is like you can sit as a person, but your dragon is like somewhere flying, and a third is where you become a dragon. I think this is really interesting idea, and I would like to read more about it. And I love dragons, so this was one of the reasons I read this book, and I will continue to read till the 3rd one to finish the series. The 3rd book I read is The Chase by Al Kennedy. This is the first book in Briar series, which is this series that comes after Off Campus. This is my first book by Al Kennedy, and I would not necessarily say I enjoy it, because I do think that I have quite high demand from romance, so this did not work out for me. I wanted more, and I wanted just see more. It's just boring for me because our female main character, she's like an Elle Woods but without academics, and the guy is just feels like a man written by a woman, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just so repetitive, like everyone doing it, so I don't see the appeal in stories like that. Next book I read this winter is probably the best book I read so far this year, is Murder on Orient Express by Agatha Christie. It's of course well-known detective classic, and I still till this day don't think I know and understand everything that happened in this book, which is why I would love to reread it in some time when I still remember everything and I can pick up the clues that I could not pick up the first time. And I'm really excited for that. But it's well thought story with so many lines, and each character feels different. Like, even though the book is quite short and we don't see all characters, like their backstory and everything, but they do feel distinct from each other, so you don't like, who's that, every time they pop up. And it's truly atmospherical. I love trains, and I would love to travel something like Orient Express, and it gave that beautiful atmosphere which I crave, which I love, and which I would still maybe interested in reading such a book beside the whole aspect of this. And I'm so excited to continue my journey with Agatha Christie from now on. And the last book that took me a month to read and probably put me definitely in a slump. It is Six Crimson Crane by Elizabeth Lim. This is high fantasy based on Asian mythology. It's quite interesting because we all know the story about the girl who lost her voice and her brothers turned into cranes, and this kind of the interpretation of the story, which it was nice, it was interesting, it was really detailed, and we have a dragon character, which is also nice because that's why I decided to read it. But it's a bit slow paced, too slow paced for my liking, which took me a long time to read it, unfortunately. And I'm not entirely happy about this because it did put me even more in a slump than I already was. But it is nice, and I really like, in the end, I'm still curious what will happen, and the last 100 pages, of course, were really interesting, but I am still curious enough to pick up the second book in duology and to complete the story. And I hope that how the first book ended, we will see more of Suryo, which is the dragon character, and we will explore more of the dragon aspect of the story, because this is my true reason why I love Asian fantasy, because they interpret a lot of dragons, and that's what my most interesting aspect about it. So yes, in total I read only 5 books. I did start many of the books in February, but I have not finished them, so I will talk about them in my next wrap-up, which will be either in end of March if I read a substantial amount of books till then, or by the end of the spring. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for my other videos.